leadership journey. And your journey to becoming the first female president of Illinois College is both inspiring and groundbreaking. Can you tell us about your journey and any key influences or moments that have been particularly important?
Well, thank you very much, Melissa. I'm delighted to talk about that journey. I grew up outside of Chicago, and as a young teenager moved to Minneapolis, and my career has traversed both of those states, which I can talk about in a little while. I would say that I came through what at the time was a very traditional path to the presidency. That is certainly changing. Have spent my entire career at private, independent liberal arts colleges and universities in 3 different states. And I was very fortunate to have mentors along the way in each of those opportunities to progress in my career, from a tenured faculty member to a department chair, to a graduate program director, to a dean of faculty, dean of college, chief academic officer, and then the presidency of Illinois College. And I think the pivot points for me early on, I graduated from the College of St. Benedict in central Minnesota. And it was striking to me in a conversation I had recently about the early 80s, when it was really the largest group, a generation of women who were coming into the workforce, who were stepping onto the shoulders of giants, and more opportunities for women who are now sort of the tail end of the baby boomer generation in that period of time. And I had a number of chances starting my career and even in graduate school of people tapping me on the shoulder and saying, "Have you ever thought about?" Mm-hmm. And the reality was, when I graduated from college, I was not clear what the about was going to be at all. In my family, the expectation was that I would go to college. That was never in doubt, and I am grateful to my parents for their attitude about that for all 3 of their children. But I recognize now, looking back, that there was no game plan after that, meeting that goal of graduating from college. And soon after I graduated, I was encouraged by a mentor from my undergraduate programs. Had I ever thought about pursuing an MBA? And I did that. And that was at the University of Minnesota. And I found in that experience, which then led to a doctoral program, which was also about, you've done really well in the MBA program, have you ever thought about pursuing a doctorate? And what I learned, Melissa, at that time was that and my background was business, I was most interested in institutional issues and leadership, and the integration of leadership actions with what's happening in the external environment. And so a real focus in organizational behavior and strategic management. And so I think there was an opportunity through these nudges, really, and confidence, that I continued to prepare and to explore opportunities that were opening for me from the moment that I began graduate school. And I don't take any of that for granted. I have often said that I stand on the shoulders of the women at St. John's University and the College of St. Benedict, who were the pioneers, who were the first to get tenure. They were the first to be department chairs. They were the first to lead tenure and promotion committees. They were the first to be a chief academic officer at St. John's and St. Ben's. And so I took for granted what those women had experienced. And now looking back, I realized how fortunate my generation was, and that there was a pivotal moment in my academic faculty career, Melissa, when I had to make that leap of faith about pursuing an administrative academic career. And I took that leap, left a tenured position, and I wasn't sure, but I knew I had to explore that. An opening happened, and I realized that I did not see myself in a faculty role for the rest of my career. And I was drawn again to the broader issues of higher education.
What a wonderful trajectory. And I can see so much in your journey that prepared you incredibly well, particularly for the realities that college presidents face today with the very dynamic higher education environment. So I should say I grew up very close to St. Ben's. So that's another common experience that we have. I have many friends who went there. I wound up going to Concordia in Moorhead to start my undergraduate experience. But
That's wonderful. My family, my parents are from Fargo, Moorhead area. So we have both traveled the path from on 94 to that corner of the world. I'm glad to know about our connecting dot.
Yeah, indeed. So now some of our listeners may not be familiar with Illinois College, and so I want to give you a chance to give us a high-level overview of the institution, including some of those things that you might describe as your points of pride.
Illinois College was founded in 1829. We are the oldest degree granting institution in the state of Illinois, located in West Central Illinois. We are only 90 miles straight north of St. Louis, and so that positions us in the state. Jacksonville is a community of about 20,000. This is a very strong region around agriculture. And in some ways, Melissa, it feels very much like the route we have both driven between the Twin Cities and St. Cloud, Minnesota. In fact, the first time I drove from Springfield, so we're 30 miles west of the capital.
Sure.
And the first time I drove here, I felt like I was in central Minnesota. And so, sort of an immediate affinity for the place. We have over 1,000 students. We are one of the small private colleges and universities in this country that are making a huge difference in the lives of so many students. And so as we approach our bicentennial, a point of pride is the longevity and strength of Illinois College. I stand on those founders' shoulders too. I'm the first woman in this role, and I'm the 14th president in only almost 200 years, which when you think about the span of tenure and the work that can be accomplished and has been accomplished. We are members of the Council of Independent Colleges. I'm very proud of that. And I think we are in that group of shining stars of private independent higher education. So I'm very proud of that strong legacy of risk-taking and being relevant to the region and the community we serve. And we continue to do that. For example, in the great shortage we're seeing in the region, of course, around the country in nursing, we had an opportunity to step up in the midst of the pandemic in 2020 and stand up a nursing program within 4 months, and are now in a significant partnership with Memorial Health, which is our main system in this region, really thinking about how do we best prepare nurses, and we've gone all in. So I think we are a gutsy institution, nimble, and really focused on how do we remain relevant and necessary in this time when I think we have never needed our institutions more.
Boy, that's the question, isn't it? I wish more institutions were asking that question front and center, because that is really such a critical thing, particularly for the small independents. Now, the longevity of your presidents is really remarkable. So did you say 14 presidents over?
I'm the 14th president.
14th. Yeah, over 200.
And I'm in my 11th year.
Yeah, which is really remarkable. And that says something about the institution for sure. So what a great tradition to also have inherited as the president. So let's talk a little bit about your approach to leadership. As you know, leadership requires often a blend of vision, of resilience, and the ability to inspire. How would you describe your approach to leadership? How has it evolved over the years. I talked to a lot of presidents who have been in the role for a while, and they talk about phases of their
Mhm.
presidency and how it does in fact evolve. And then I'm wondering if you could share a pivotal moment or a decision in your tenure that you feel best exemplifies your leadership style and vision.
Melissa, I completely agree that leadership styles evolve. My work has evolved. I think fundamentally I have the same core leadership values that I brought into this work. And every experience shapes me. And I know that I have evolved in so many ways that I'm really happy about in my leadership. And part of that is the evolution of a senior team.
Mm.
And I think new presidents know, and those of us who have served in any length of time over a couple of years know that work with a senior team continues to evolve. I have had the good fortune of working with really wonderful colleagues as I do right now. We can talk a little bit more about that. But I think that I evolve with the spirit and the talents and the experiences that the senior team brings to the table. You're never static. And as an organizational behaviorist, I'm also thinking about how is that socially constructed, right?
Mm.
And the same people are not at the table, and therefore things change. I would describe my leadership style as consultative. And by that, I mean, I am very interested in understanding what others around me are thinking and talking about and how they approach an issue.
Mm.
And I have expanded, just as I did when I was a faculty member, my capacity to be more and more engaged with broader people in terms of what that consultation looks like. And actually started that from the day I came to Illinois College. We had to really think carefully about what would the next decade look like for IC when I arrived. And that was a campus-wide undertaking. And I think that was all very natural for me, starting in small groups and then expanding out, and the kind of work that many presidents are doing. And I think, Melissa, it really stems from my experience as a professor.
Mm.
I would say when I was a new professor at my alma mater at St. John's University and the College of St. Benedict, I was not sure-footed enough in my craft to let a lot of control out of my hands. And I think I only became a strong professor when I was involved in a team teaching program with my colleagues in the department and with students, where it was not all prescribed every day. And I think that experience then influenced my capacity to really think differently about how we learn together. And I think as I have gone through my years at Illinois College, I think that experience that is grounded in my faculty experience has really lifted up that skill set for me. And so we think about what is the student-centered decision that needs to be made in this moment. And that is my lens. It is my lens on how we achieve our primary goals around student success, strategic growth, and sustainable foundations for the institution. That has to happen in broad conversation. So I would say a pivotal moment in my presidency, of course, was the pandemic.
Mm.
And I think about a pre-pandemic presidency and a post-pandemic presidency.
Mm.
And the experience that I had, and I know colleagues around the country had, was that, one day I found myself sitting behind this screen and on Zoom calls 10, 12 hours a day. And there was no world beyond gathering input and ideas and expertise from around this entire campus. And we organized the decision-making and the bringing things to the table in an amped up way. And I think that it was a reminder to me of the enormous talent across this campus. And we were all, as presidents, trying to figure out how to make this work, right? And as campuses, we were trying to figure out how this worked. And I would say a pivotal decision for which I had strong support from the board is that we would reopen in the fall of 2020. We felt that our students needed to be on campus. The vast majority of them would flounder. Actually, the vast majority, but too many students would flounder without the structure of being on campus. We had a hybrid model on campus, but they were here. In fact, when colleges had to stop in the March of 2020, I made a decision. It really was my decision with, of course, understanding of the ramifications. We did not send students home who had no place to go. And so we had about 135 students on campus, and it wasn't pretty, but we made it work. And that really informed my thinking about what would we need to do as a campus community to reopen in that fall. And the work everybody brought to that moment was a reminder to me that we always have to be thinking about what is the expertise around us and who are the leaders who maybe were given the first opportunity to shine and for me to be involved with at a daily level almost. So I think that was an interesting period of time, and it shifted how I think about some of the work we're doing on campus from a strategic planning point of view.
Boy, I would think so. What a remarkable learning that you took away, that I would imagine you and the entire team took away. And you know, the one thing I don't think there's been enough attention given to is the learning out of the pandemic. Because again, as I talk to presidents and I ask them about this, one of the things they will comment on is something they have pulled forward that they had to learn, or you know, a new way of thinking about something, or a new strategy, or I think it's a very rich experience, and you've just articulated it beautifully.
Thank you, Melissa. I think the other piece that was the pivot point, and I think this is a very positive thing, regardless of how your campus is structured and how course learning is structured, we all took a years long leap, or many years ahead leap on instructional technology.
Yeah.
And now when we talk about hybrid learning, every class has a hybrid element, right? There's an openness and a clarity about the value of instructional technology. And we were strategic in our investments around instructional technology through funding through the federal government, through additional funding we had from being a Title III grant institution. And I would say we leapt ahead 5 years at least on our infrastructure around technology.
Boy, and again, what a gift for the future of the institution. So now let's talk about your longevity. You had mentioned you're in your 11th year, which is, what is that? At least double, if not more, the average tenure of college presidents today. I think the tenure is going down from what I've read, the research I've seen. So, you know, staying in a presidential role is no small feat. So what do you attribute your longevity in the role to?
A few things come to mind. I think one is strong alignment between my vision for higher education and independent higher education and my values and what is happening at Illinois College. And I felt that right away. I also, coming out of my experience of St. John's and St. Ben's, and then I was at St. Scholastica and St. Vincent. So for listeners, I have been at Benedictine institutions. That was really the Catholic Benedictine was the core of my experience as a faculty member and a dean and a student. I've spent 13 years at Augsburg. university, and so had a strong sense of the Lutheran tradition. And in each of these experiences, I think part of that longevity is I was learning all the time in those roles. And I was fortunate to find in Illinois College a place where I could bring all of those experiences and relationships I had in the professional network to this opportunity. And so that alignment, if I go back to the Benedictine tradition, there is a strong emphasis among Benedictines that there's a lot of clarity about the importance of hospitality. There is a focus on stewardship. We are given opportunities to be stewards of what will come after us. And there is a value placed on a sense of place. And I think that I am a person who believes in that rootedness and that sense of place and the joy of being in a community that is always changing and evolving. I look back on my first year and it was a different kind of experience in that year. And so I think part of the longevity is building community, having a sense of growth within that community, being challenged by interesting ideas, and being around really talented people. I said to somebody over the weekend, I love being part of a multi-generational world. And from the new child born to a faculty member to talking with a retiring faculty member and talking with 20-year-olds. And I'm fascinated by our young professionals who are in their 20s and 30s. And there is a Gen X member of the cabinet, and I'm learning from her all the time. And so, I just think that I've had an opportunity to continue to grow and learn, and I'm just fascinated by that. I think that that's the work that we're doing, and I feel called to this work. And that comes out of the Lutheran and Presbyterian tradition. And, there is a calling, and I think that that's an important part of longevity of fit with an institution. And the last thing I would say, Melissa, is I had the opportunity when I was at the college at St. Vincent. I was the first woman to serve as the dean and chief academic officer there, and I reported to Brother Norman Hips, who was the president also for a number of years. And Brother Norman said to me, "There's so much that you can accomplish if you stay." And I think that that is absolutely true. And it does require reinvention. I am not the president who came here in the summer of 2013, but my core values have not shifted.
Yeah, boy, that is very, very wise. And I'm glad you came back at the end here to the reinvention, because I think if you hadn't been willing to evolve as the institution evolved and the needs changed, I'm not sure the longevity is necessarily as likely to happen. So now, the role of the college president, as we've already talked about, has changed a lot over the years, particularly with the challenges of the digital age, the financial pressures, and the pandemic, as you just discussed. How do you think the role of the president has changed since you took the helm? And in particular, have expectations for the president changed? And I'm very mindful of the recent Senate hearings and all of the buzz and the press that followed that in terms of the three presidents who were grilled, and then unfortunately the two that are no longer in their roles. So that has raised, as you know, a lot of questions, a lot of discussion about what is the role of the college president today. So what's your take on that?
It's such a great question. And it's something that I've been thinking about quite a bit, actually, and in conversation with my colleagues. I would say that a few things. I think the intensity and the complexity of the challenges has gone into overdrive since I began my presidency of Illinois College. It's not that we haven't always had our issues. I mean, generations of college presidents have dealt with their issue in their time, right? I think one of the things that has made this more complicated are the really rapid shifts around the demographic profile of students who are attending colleges and universities, what happened post-pandemic with that student population. So I would say that's just an example, but I would say that the complexity of the issues for which there are no clear answers has become more intense, and the velocity with which they are coming at us as presidents is tremendous. And it's not a succession of issues. It's like simultaneously, how are we managing all of this, all of the opportunities and the challenges in front of us? I don't mean to suggest that it's all of the negative side of it, but I do think that the digital age, the role of social media for our students, and IC also has an online program for adults, so I don't want to leave them out, but I'll speak to the students who are on campus, and I see them looking at different types of places to get their information. We're always thinking about informational literacy. It's not that it wasn't a matter of import 10 years ago or 11 years ago, but I think we're just seeing things accelerated at a pace and often out of our control. And so things like the families and prospective students who are wondering across the country if college is even worth it. So what's the value of this proposition that we all hold so dear, and we know what is possible when they come to our campuses? And things from outside of our control, like the FAFSA and what that's all about. And should the president speak on this issue or that issue in the external environment? And we've had very specific conversations about how I am going to speak to issues or not. And so I think those are the changes, Melissa. I think it's velocity, and I think it's the succession and the simultaneous force of action that is required of presidents and boards. I would say there's a heightened level of board engagement that has shifted and has been very much a priority for me over the last decade.
Boy, and again, I'm not sure that's gotten as much attention perhaps as it might. But I'm seeing much more written lately about the role of the board and the need for the board and the CEO, the president, to be on the same page for sure. So under your leadership, Illinois College has launched several initiatives, as you know, including the Inspire Achievement Campaign and the development of new academic programs. You mentioned the nursing program and the online program for adults, and I know there are others. Can you discuss one initiative that you are especially proud of and the impact it's had on the college community?
I'm very happy to do that. And it's an example that is around athletics. So the Inspiring Achievement campaign for Illinois College, we completed about 18 months ago and raised over $54 million. And it was directed at capital improvements related to our athletic programs, the renovation of a 1960s science building. It rose from the ashes as another iteration of science at Illinois College, which is a growth area. Funding for scholarships, funding for experiential learning, which is an area of particular interest to me. And so in athletics, both from a capital improvement investment supported by donors and a strategic choice to build the strength of our athletic program, we have an excellent athletics complex, both outdoors and indoors, and that was in place when I arrived, and it looks as new today as when it was built over 20 years ago. And what we've done is continue to develop it and make it a best in class athletics program. And that's not only the infrastructure and the investments, for example, in updating the baseball field and the softball field and updating the indoor track and putting a brand new renovated weight room in and changing the old racquetball courts into general spots and putting lights on the athletic field outside so we could have soccer games at night. It's all part of a strategy to build both recruitment of students and also a real depth in coaching and to really engage our athletics coaches and the athletics director in relationship to the entire both recruitment and retention program. And so I lift this up because it has institutional implications, and it's been really fun to see. So just to give you an idea, when I arrived, we were using a model that had some coaches who perhaps maybe didn't know anything about a particular sport, but they were the coach for that sport. We needed to think about how do we integrate recruitment and add in assistant coaches, and how do we keep coaches who are building programs and hold everybody accountable for results. And that was a prism shift in terms of how we imagined a very important area. Athletics had always been important to Illinois College. And so we made investments, and I had the opportunity over the weekend, I'll end with this story about athletics, because I've had this conversation over the last 3 days with alumni and the board, which is that we just hosted, we are in the Midwest Conference, and our men's basketball team won the conference title, second year in a row, which gives us the joy of being able to host the Midwest Conference Championship Tournament, which we also won for the second year in a row. And I lift it up because it's an example, and it's one of many. It's an example of investment in a program and in the experience of students that is over a decade in the making. And the football team won the conference championship in October. The men's soccer team won the conference championship in October. And we're seeing this growth. And what this has meant is students who want to pursue an athletics interest, that's happening here. For students who are not interested in athletics except to be a spectator, our Brunner Sherman Gymnasium was packed to the rafters on Saturday, and a longtime board member said to me, who was there, "I have never seen so much energy and excitement on this campus." And so I want to offer it as a real-time, I can look back and trace strategic choices and investments that have led us to this moment.
Boy, that's a wonderful example of strategic investments over time, and taking the long-term view in terms of how you're investing, but having a very clear focus, which, as you know, is not always easy for institutions. There's so much pressure to pivot quickly, and congratulations on the athletic wins. I know you're in a very competitive conference with a lot of really good schools and athletic teams, so that's quite an accomplishment. So
we are. It was very exciting, and I will soon learn the team we're playing in the first round of the NCAA tournament. So
oh boy,
very excited for our students. They invited me to help cut down the net on Saturday afternoon, which was a lot of fun.
Did they have to lift you up to do that?
They helped me up a ladder.
They helped you.
So I have my piece of the net, and the students, and I would say the other thing that's so important to longevity, it's loving these students.
Sure.
We have a chance to be around, and during the pandemic that was hard because we were separated by a screen, and I have been so excited in the last year and a half to 2 years of those moments of being in the room with students around their passions and their interests. And I was reminded of that again on Saturday as I always tell our students, I'm so proud of you. And, I want you to be ambassadors for Illinois College, wherever you go in the world, and we will support you.
Sure. Well, there's nothing like winning athletic teams in a small campus setting to inspire school spirit and commitment and
Yeah.
alumni excitement, right? How many alumni do you have? What's your alumni base?
Oh, golly, over 20,000.
Yeah, but that's not that big actually for a 54 million campaign. And congratulations on that as well. That's
Thank you.
quite an achievement. So let me go back to talk a little bit, ask you about change. We've talked a lot about how the landscape has evolved, the role of the president has changed. You've already talked about some ways in which you have navigated change and challenges. As an organizational behaviorist, I'm especially interested in your thoughts about how you have led change. Any specific strategies or thoughts that you can share in that regard?
I'd like to talk about the work with the board. I think that it is part of the role of the president that is not, I don't think, talked about enough. Certainly for those of us who are first-time presidents, as I was in 2012, I had seen work with the board from the vantage point of being a member of the senior team, of being the chief academic officer at my institution, of being in conversations with the president and the board chair of the committee that I worked on. I think that the capacity of presidents to build relationships on the board may be the whole ballgame. And that the capacity for the board to grow and develop and understand the perspective of the president and an institutional perspective, short-term, medium-term, and long-term, matters a lot. I've been so fortunate to work with, so far, only 2 board chairs. And of the board chair who was in place when I was hired, she stayed on for 4 years to give me some running room. And she was someone an alumna, somebody in the Jacksonville community who had deep roots, who was going to open a lot of doors for me in the local community.
Mm.
And she gave me so much support and helped me to start to shift expectations of the board in terms of how meetings would be structured and how we would have strategic conversations and long-term discussions about how do we build on the successes of Illinois College and not sit on our laurels. That we had to, we're still pretty close to the 2008 period when I arrived, and I felt that very clearly when I was the CAO at Augsburg.
Mm.
And so ever since that time, the second board chair, very different skill set, an alumnus, former executive in a major regional ag business, and had a finance background and had a very different lens on how he wanted to think about how to structure the work and the role of the chair and the role of the president. And so I have learned from those experiences, and I've spent a lot of time in conversation with trustees, not only as donors, but in terms of their hopes and dreams for IC. And their readiness to make the investments that are necessary in our strategic work has to come from building trust with the president and the senior team.
Mm.
And I'm very conscious of that. And I think that we as presidents must take seriously the long trajectory of getting a board ready to deal with the complexity. And nothing that I have ever said to the board can be a surprise. Because I early on set the stage around transparency and what they could anticipate from me in my role and from the senior leadership team. And there are at that point, and they have been for a long time, to make decisions. And so, for example, when we stood up a nursing program in 4 months, we'd been talking for over a year about this possibility. And something happened in our region. One of our colleges, small colleges, sadly closed.
Mm.
They had a nursing program, and we were in a position because the board was well educated to make the investments we needed to make to serve the region.
Mm.
I would say the same thing about our work in IC Online. Significant shift in our portfolio of offerings, and we prepared the board for that over a period of time and engaged their expertise. So I am very fortunate to work with a highly functioning board under the leadership of now 2 board chairs. And I think navigating change at Illinois College has been very much tied to the strength of that board and their appreciation of their role versus my role and the senior leaders' roles. And they were instrumental when we made some decisions in the work on academic prioritization, which was part of an effort. And they were prepared for the recommendations that I would bring them. So no surprises is the watchword with the Board of Trustees.
Yeah, boy, that's important. And 2 board chairs over 11 years is remarkable. Yeah. So,
I'm very lucky.
well, but I imagine you are also skilled at that and have learned a lot and have put into practice what you've learned. So, my sense is that you are constantly learning. That's a part of perhaps how you approach things, which is also a wonderful attribute for a president to have.
Thank you very much.
Experiential learning. You have mentioned experiential learning. I know this has been a hallmark of your presidency. Why do you believe experiential learning is such a critical thing for today's students? And how has experiential learning evolved, especially during your time?
I am a product of an experiential learning opportunity of being able to study abroad.
Oh.
When I was an undergraduate, I studied in France. And like for so many people, it is the signature moment in my undergraduate career. And part of that lifelong learning is that to this day, I have a very strong interest in all things France and the French culture. And this summer, I will once again return to the house I lived in
Oh,
as
wow.
as a student in Aix-en-Provence in southern France, and I will visit my family who hosted me during that really incredible period of time. And I think that I was beyond my personal experience when I was the chief academic officer at St. Vincent College. The college received a gift of over $1 million that was designated. It was an endowment, and the draw from that endowment would be spent on faculty student research primarily. When that was, this is in the mid to late 90s, and this is a whole new experience for me. And I saw very early on the power of those kernels of faculty research that would matter. And I think it also funded internships. And when I became the chief academic officer at Augsburg, I carried with me that real sense that in high impact learning, the chance for students to engage in moments that leverage their classroom, but brought them into a new sphere of learning and understanding was magic. And so since I've been at Illinois College, one of our early strategic initiatives was to build the undergraduate faculty student research program. There were some restricted funds that were in place, We made it one of the signature elements of Inspiring Achievement, the campaign for Illinois College. And I could talk very clearly about why this mattered and how we want to engage at a high level the number of students who are involved in not only undergraduate research, but who have a chance to have short-term or long-term international experiences, for students to do internships, to be involved in our community in terms of civic engagement. And I think those stories of success are real, and that undergraduate program has grown by leaps and bounds here. Our dean of faculty, who was on a 4-year sort of internal tour, she'll return to the biology department, which is the way we have set up that second role in academic affairs. She has been a leader in thinking with faculty members about particularly undergraduate research. And so when I see students who are building on that experience to achieve dreams they never imagined possible, going on at Johns Hopkins to receive a PhD, and now working on the coronavirus, which is really extraordinary. Or students right now who are applying to national universities that might not have been on their radar. And hiring faculty, I would say this would be the last thing I would say about it. We're hiring faculty who are deeply committed to this work. So I think there's building blocks around this effort around undergraduate research that I feel strongly about. And I think it opens the world, just as my experience of studying abroad opened the world and changed my life forever.
Thank you for that. Yeah, and the research from the AAC&U on high impact practices certainly affirms everything that you have said and have experienced. So it's really compelling. I want to talk about your collaborative approach, which extends way beyond Illinois College. You are actively involved. In fact, I don't know if you ever sleep. When I read the list of all of the leadership opportunities that you have held or you're holding in networks and organizations, how do these collaborations enhance your leadership from your perspective? How do they benefit Illinois College and the broader community?
Being part of national associations or regional associations or our Midwest Conference League of Presidents, I learned something every day. For example, serving as the chair of the board of the Council of Independent Colleges, I just finished my term. I'm now going to be the past chair for 2 years. I have met presidents in that work I would not have met or would not have been able to have the in-depth conversations I'm having. It has been absolute pleasure both to work with Rich Ekman, the previous president, and Marjorie Haas, who is the current president, and to see what is possible in supporting independent private higher education. And so whether it's in the Council of Independent Colleges work, or it is serving on the tax policy committee of NICU, which is our federal advocacy organization under the leadership of Barbara Mystic. I bring back to campus all of the latest topics that are in front of presidents and that they care about. Or when I go to the Council of Independent Colleges President's Institute in January, I sit in a room as the board chair with 60 new presidents and learn about how they are seeing this work and learning from them about what higher education looks like from their seat, from their region, from their community. And I think bringing back that lens to our campus and to my own personal growth and development has just been a treasure. And it just happens that Marjorie Haas and Barbara Mystic were presidents when I became president, and I always looked up to them and thought, oh my gosh, there is just something about the way they are seeing the world that in some ways goes back to my early days of graduate school, which is I want to understand the institutional factors that are affecting Illinois College and, really understand that in my bones. And I have to understand it in the broader landscape of what's happening at the state and federal level. And I often talk with the campus community and certainly with trustees about what I'm learning on those fronts.
Boy, indeed, having that broader perspective adds so much benefit and value to everybody. So we just have a couple of minutes left. And so two final questions. This first question is really a two-pronged question, and it has to do with navigating the future of higher ed. So I'm going to ask you to take out your crystal ball. And as you're looking ahead, undoubtedly the landscape of higher ed is going to continue to change, to continue to be both challenging, but also a place where there will be all kinds of opportunities we can't even imagine at this point, particularly for small, agile, liberal arts colleges. So what are your thoughts about the future of higher ed and how institutions like your own can continue to thrive? That's the first part of the question. And the second has to do with whether you have any advice for aspiring leaders as they look to this future and how best to prepare, perhaps.
I would say that, put your seatbelt on in terms of the direction of higher education. And I would note that as presidents and as other leaders within higher education, not just presidents, we have to embrace that that's where we are. And I say all the time, this is seismic change for our era in higher education. As we talked about earlier, the velocity is tremendous of that change. And I think that calls on us to confront the adversity and the opportunities. There are no easy answers, as I often say to our trustees. I will not bring you problems for which I have no answer, except I'll always bring you problems for which I have no immediate answer. I do not have a crystal ball about where this goes. But I think as leaders of institutions, we have to have the courage to face the vulnerabilities that we experience personally and our institutions are facing, and be bold and courageous in our decision-making in the face of it. And that's what we have to do. It's not going to be a slow walk here. It's going to be a fast run. And I think organizations that are ready to do lots of things, not outside of their capacity, but are we building capacity to take on a variety of complex issues that have both concerns embedded in them and also opportunities. And it's going to be a lot of different things. So we have to really know ourselves as institutions about what is that capacity we have, and are we willing and able to take risks in the face of what's happening in front of us. And I would say, advice for aspiring leaders, I would offer, accept every opportunity you have to build a portfolio of experiences that will make you even stronger in your work. And that's both within your discipline and outside of your discipline, to focus on professional development that takes you down many different paths. As I said when we started, Melissa, I think my spark to be a president, though I didn't think so. My husband always thought so. He was way ahead of me on this. But my spark was that at St. John's and St. Ben's, I had a chance to see a broader picture. And I think that aspiring leaders should be curious about what's going on at their institution and in the national and regional landscape. I think it's important to take chances in accepting new positions, both within an institution and outside of the institution. We know that there are some populations, among them women, who look at a position description, and if you don't check every box, you don't even take the lunch, right?
Mm.
And I want to encourage people, take the leap of faith, because there's so much to be gained from exploration and testing those limits. You'll meet great people, and the opportunity to learn from every experience, every institution, every encounter is real. And I am inspired by the pipeline of leaders who are ready and preparing to lead our private independent colleges and universities. And it is really fun to see that in motion, and the organizations working with students or working with prospective leaders in important ways.
Great advice, and much needed for this era. So, President Farley, here's the signature question we ask of every guest who comes on Ingenious. If you could leave one transformative idea or piece of advice that would shape the future of higher education, what would it be and why? And you've talked to that, but I'm giving you a chance to have the last word here with your one idea.
One idea is to be bold, ready, and willing to jump into the arena and make a difference, because our students need us more than ever.
Wonderful. Thank you so very much for your time, for your wisdom. This has been just a terrific conversation. So I appreciate your time and willingness to be on the Ingenious podcast with me.
Thank you very much, Melissa. It's been a great pleasure.